The Kepler-4042 mining facility hummed with the constant thrum of industrial activity, its metallic corridors echoing with the sounds of a dozen different species going about their work. Commander Sarah Chen stepped through the main airlock, her human delegation trailing behind as they made their way toward the central negotiation chamber. The mining rights dispute had brought together representatives from across 3 star systems, and tensions were already running high. The facility's artificial gravity felt lighter than Earth standard, giving Chen's movements a subtle bounce that she quickly adapted to. Through the reinforced viewports, the amber glow of Kepler-442b's twin suns cast long shadows across the asteroid's scarred surface. This wasn't some pristine diplomatic station. This was a working facility where fortunes were made and lost, in the dark between stars. "Commander Chen," greeted Administrator Vexahai, a tall, crystalline being whose voice chimed like wind through metal. "The Thrakari delegation arrived early. They've been vocal about their position." Chen nodded, studying the layout of the facility. The negotiation chamber sat at the hub of 5 main corridors, with living quarters and work areas radiating outward like spokes. It was practical, efficient, and entirely unlike the sterile diplomatic venues she was used to. Here, every surface showed wear from honest labor. Every corridor carried the scent of metal shavings and recycled air. As they approached the chamber, Chen could hear raised voices echoing from within. The translator implants automatically adjusted, converting the deep, rumbling syllables of Thrakari speech into comprehensible words. Someone was angry, very angry. The humans think they can simply walk in and claim what is ours. The voice was like grinding stone, heavy with rage. "These soft creatures from their water world have no understanding of strength." Chen's aide, Lieutenant Torres, glanced nervously at her commander. The Thrakari were known throughout the galaxy for their physical prowess. Massive, heavily muscled beings who had evolved on a high-gravity world where only the strongest survived. Their culture valued direct confrontation and respected physical dominance above all else. "Ma'am," Torres whispered, "perhaps we should wait for the Galactic Arbitration Council's security team to arrive first." Chen shook her head, her expression calm and determined. "No, Lieutenant. We go in now. Sometimes the best way to handle a bully is to walk right up to them." The chamber doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a circular room with a central table surrounded by chairs designed for various alien physiologies. But the furniture was the last thing anyone noticed. Standing at the far end of the room, towering over 2 cowering Vex-High administrators, was Thrakari War Chief Brutokmar, all 330 pounds of muscle, bone ridges, and barely contained fury. The massive alien's head snapped toward the entrance as Chen stepped inside, his 4 eyes blazing with predatory intensity. For a moment that stretched like eternity, the only sound was the distant hum of the mining equipment. Then Brutokmar's lips pulled back in what might charitably be called a smile, revealing rows of sharp, bone-white teeth. Brutokmar straightened. To his full, imposing height, his massive frame casting a shadow across half the negotiation chamber. The Thrakari war chief stood nearly 8 feet tall, his thick hide scarred from countless battles, bone ridges running along his skull and down his spine like natural armor. His 4 arms ended in hands that could crush steel, and his legs were as thick as tree trunks. "So," he rumbled, his voice carrying the weight of avalanches, "the humans finally arrive." His 4 eyes fixed on Commander Chen with predatory focus. "I am Brutokmar, War Chief of the Thrakari Hegemony, conqueror of 17 worlds, and I will not be delayed by the whimpering of soft-flesh diplomats." The 2 Vex-High administrators pressed themselves against the far wall, their crystalline forms chiming softly with fear. Lieutenant Torres instinctively stepped back, his hand moving toward his sidearm. Even Administrator Vex-High seemed to shrink in the presence of the massive alien. But Commander Chen simply walked forward, her boots clicking steadily against the metal decking. She moved with the measured pace of someone taking a casual stroll, her hands clasped behind her back, her expression one of mild interest rather than concern. "War Chief Brutokmar," she said pleasantly, stopping just 10 feet from the towering alien. "I'm Commander Sarah Chen, representing Earth's mining consortium. I understand you have concerns about our proposal." Brutokmar's bone ridges flared outward, a threat display that would send most species fleeing. His thick muscles bunched beneath his hide as he leaned forward, bringing his scarred face down to Chen's eye level. The smell of sulfur and ozone wafted from his breathing vents. "Concerns?" he roared, spittle flying from his fanged maw. "You insects think you can claim the richest asteroid belt in 3 systems? These rocks have been marked by Thrakari blood for 2 centuries. We fought the Zephyrian Collective for them. We died for them." His voice rose to a bone-rattling bellow that made the chamber's metal walls ring like a struck bell. "I have broken the spines of creatures twice your size with my bare hands. I have crushed the skulls of warriors who made generals weep. What makes you think your pathetic species has any right to challenge us?" Throughout the tirade, Chen stood perfectly still, her gray eyes never leaving Brutokmar's furious gaze. She didn't flinch when he roared. She didn't step back when he leaned closer. She didn't even blink when droplets of his saliva landed on her uniform jacket. When the war chief finally paused for breath, Chen tilted her head slightly, as if considering his words with academic interest. "Are you finished?" she asked in the same calm conversational tone she might use to discuss the weather. The question hit Brutokmar like a physical blow. His 4 eyes widened in shock, and for the first time in his long career of intimidation, he found himself momentarily speechless. The silence in the negotiation chamber stretched taut as a wire. Brutokmar's massive chest heaved with each breath. His 4 eyes locked on the small human who stood before him with infuriating composure. Around them, the other occupants of the room seemed frozen in place, watching what appeared to be a standoff between a mountain and a grain of sand. "Finished?" Brutokmar repeated, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "You dare mock me, human!" His 4 arms spread wide, displaying the full intimidating span of his frame. "Do you have any idea what I am capable of?" Chen's expression remained perfectly neutral, though something flickered in her gray eyes. Not fear, but what might have been amusement. "I imagine you're capable of quite a lot," she replied evenly. "Physical strength, combat prowess, the ability to intimidate most species you encounter. Your reputation precedes you, War Chief." The calm acknowledgement seemed to confuse Brutokmar, more than outright defiance would have. His bone ridges flattened slightly as he tried to process this unexpected response. "Then you understand," he said, leaning even closer until his breath washed over Chen's face, "that I could break you in half without effort. Your fragile bones would snap like dried twigs. Your soft flesh would tear like paper." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "You probably could," she agreed. "You outweigh me by about 200 pounds. You're nearly 3 feet taller, and your species evolved for combat on a high-gravity world. Physically speaking, you have every advantage." Torres and the Vexhai administrators stared in horror, certain that Chen had lost her mind. Even Brutokmar seemed taken aback by her matter-of-fact assessment of her own disadvantages. "Yet here you stand," he snarled, confusion creeping into his tone. "Why do you not flee? Why do you not beg for mercy? What kind of creature faces certain death with such indifference?" Chen's lips curved in the slightest hint of a smile. "The kind that comes from a world where everything is trying to kill you," she said quietly. "You see, War Chief, Earth isn't just a water world, as your intelligence reports probably described it. It's a planet where evolution spent 4 billion years perfecting the art of murder. She began to pace slowly, her movements relaxed and casual, as if she were giving a lecture rather than facing down a creature that could literally tear her apart. We share our world with animals that can kill us in hundreds of different ways. Toxins that stop our hearts in minutes. Predators that hunt in coordinated packs. Microscopic organisms that eat us from the inside out. Natural disasters that can level entire cities. She paused, meeting Brutokmar's gaze directly. And yet we not only survived, we thrived. The war chief's threatening posture began to waver, as confusion replaced rage. This wasn't how intimidation was supposed to work. The prey was meant to cower, to submit, to recognize their place in the natural order. They weren't supposed to give impromptu biology lessons. Your point being? He demanded, though his voice had lost some of its thunder. Chen's smile widened slightly, and for the first time since entering the chamber, Brutokmar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: uncertainty. My point, War Chief, is that you're not the scariest thing I've faced this week. Brutokmar took an involuntary step backward, his massive frame suddenly seeming less imposing and more confused. The human's words had struck something deep in his predator's brain, the part that recognized when the usual rules of engagement no longer applied. Not the scariest? He repeated, his voice losing its commanding bellow and taking on an almost bewildered tone. Chen continued her casual pace around the chamber, her hands still clasped behind her back. 2 days ago, I was diving in Earth's Pacific Ocean, studying deep-sea mining techniques. Do you know what lives down there, War Chief? In the crushing darkness under pressure that would implode your ship. She gestured to the viewport showing the asteroid field beyond. Creatures that make the things in your nightmares look friendly. Giant squid with tentacles longer than your body and beaks that can bite through steel. Jellyfish whose touch brings agony beyond description. Fish with teeth like glass needles and stomachs that can expand to swallow prey twice their size. Brutokmar's 4 eyes tracked her movement, but his threatening stance had completely dissolved. The bone ridges along his spine had flattened, and his 4 arms hung uncertainly at his sides. And that's just the ocean, Chen continued conversationally. On land, we have creatures that inject venom that liquefies tissue from the inside out, others that carry diseases that can wipe out entire populations, some that hunt in such perfect coordination that their prey never even knows they're being stalked until it's too late. Lieutenant Torres watched in amazement as his commander systematically dismantled the war chief's psychological advantage with nothing more than a nature documentary. But the really dangerous things on Earth, Chen said, stopping directly in front of Brutokmar again, aren't the creatures with fangs and claws. They're the ones that look harmless. A tiny mosquito that carries malaria. A beautiful flower whose nectar contains enough alkaloids to stop a heart. A microscopic virus that can bring down civilizations. She tilted her head, studying the massive alien with the same clinical interest. She might show a particularly interesting specimen. You know what all of these things taught us, War Chief? That size doesn't determine the winner, neither does strength or speed or how loud you can roar. Then, what does? Brutokmar asked, and there was genuine curiosity in his voice now, rather than rage. Adaptability, Chen replied simply. Intelligence, the ability to remain calm under pressure and find solutions when everything seems hopeless. The refusal to give up, even when facing impossible odds. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. We learned that the most dangerous predator isn't the one that announces itself with threats and displays. It's the one that watches, learns, and adapts. The war chief stared down at her, his massive head tilting in a gesture that might have been confusion or dawning respect. Around them, the chamber had gone completely silent except for the distant hum of mining equipment. Your species, he said slowly, survived by becoming something other than predators or prey. Chen nodded. We became something else entirely. We became problem solvers. And right now, War Chief, you're not a threat to be feared. You're a problem to be solved. For the first time in his long and violent career, Brutokmar felt the unfamiliar sensation of being outmaneuvered by something smaller, weaker, and infinitely more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The mining facility's artificial lighting cast long shadows across the negotiation chamber as an extraordinary transformation took place. Brutokmar, the feared war chief who had conquered 17 worlds through brute force and intimidation, slowly lowered himself into one of the reinforced chairs designed for his species. The gesture was so unexpected that Torres actually reached for his weapon before Chen's subtle hand signal stopped him. "You speak of adaptation and problem-solving," Brutokmar said, his voice now thoughtful rather than threatening. "But surely you understand that in the void between stars, strength still matters. Resources are finite. Territory must be defended." Chen took the seat across from him, the table between them now serving as a negotiation platform rather than a barrier. "Of course strength matters," she agreed, "but not the kind you've been relying on." She activated the holographic display built into the table's surface, bringing up detailed scans of the asteroid field in question. "These asteroids contain enough rare metals to supply 3 star systems for decades, but look at the extraction challenges." The display showed complex gravitational interactions, unstable orbital mechanics, and dangerous radiation fields surrounding the richest deposits. Brute force mining techniques will yield maybe 30% of the available resources before the asteroid field destabilizes and becomes too dangerous to work. Brutokmar leaned forward, studying the data with obvious intelligence despite his previous display of pure aggression. His 4 eyes tracked the holographic models as Chen manipulated them. "However," she continued, "human adaptive mining techniques, combined with Thrakari engineering expertise and heavy lift capabilities, could extract nearly 90% of the resources while actually stabilizing the field for long-term operation." The war chief's bone ridges rose slightly, not in threat this time, but in what Torres was beginning to recognize as surprise. "You propose cooperation?" "I propose recognizing that the strongest predator in the galaxy isn't the one that fights alone," Chen replied. "Earth's history is full of examples where cooperation between different strengths created results that neither could achieve alone. We call it symbiosis." She gestured to the mining facility around them. "This station exists because 12 different species found ways to combine their unique abilities. The Vexhi provide crystalline computing matrices that can process asteroid trajectory calculations in real time. The Zolari Engineering Corps specializes in zero-gravity construction. Humans contribute adaptive problem-solving and crisis management." Brutokmar was silent for a long moment, his massive hands steepled in front of him as he processed this information. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a note of something that might have been wonder. "On Thrakar, we have a legend," he said slowly. "It speaks of the silent hunters, creatures so perfectly adapted to their environment that they needed neither size nor strength to dominate their territory. We believed them to be mythical." Chen smiled. "Not mythical, just from a different kind of evolution." The war chief stood, but this time his movement was ceremonial rather than threatening. "Commander Chen of Earth," he said formally, "I withdraw my challenge. Your species has demonstrated the worthiness that comes not from the strength of muscle, but from the strength of mind." He extended one massive hand toward her. "The Thrakari hegemony would be honored to form an alliance with the silent hunters of Terra." As Chen stood and clasped his hand in both of hers, Torres could hardly believe what he was witnessing. Around them, the other species representatives emerged from their positions along the walls, chattering excitedly about the unexpected resolution. "War Chief," Chen said as they shook hands, "I think this is the beginning of a very productive partnership." Later, as the formal agreements were being drafted, Torres approached his commander with obvious admiration. "Ma'am, how did you know that would work?" Chen looked out at the asteroid field, where mining ships from multiple species were already beginning coordinated operations. "Simple psychology, Lieutenant. The most dangerous predators in the universe aren't the ones who announce themselves with roars and threats. They're the ones who recognize that true strength comes from understanding when not to fight and when to turn an enemy into an ally. In the depths of space, surrounded by the dangerous beauty of the asteroid field, a new kind of alliance was born, one based not on dominance or submission, but on the recognition that the greatest strength comes from knowing when to adapt.